Harsh light is tough. Blinding highlights, deep shadows, extreme contrast. But if you know how to use it, you can turn those challenges into some of the most striking street shots you'll ever take. No matter how tricky the light gets, you don't have to fight it, you just have to know how to work with it. Let's break it down. One of the biggest factors in making harsh light work is understanding where the light comes from and how it affects your subject. Different scenes lit from different directions can create completely different moods. So let's break down how side lighting, backlight and front light each work and how you can use them. Side lighting is one of the most effective ways to add depth to your photos. It brings out texture, enhances contrast, and will make details pop. When the light is coming from the side, it creates shadows that sculpt any subject, giving your images more of a three-dimensional look. This works especially well with subjects with strong shapes or interesting surfaces like people in textured clothing or buildings with deep grooves, brickwork or patterns. Backlighting is perfect for creating bold silhouettes or just adding a soft glow around a subject. When the light source is directly behind your subject, you get that classic high contrast look where the subject goes completely dark so that they stand out against a bright background. But even if you don't go full silhouette, backlighting can separate a subject from the background and add a natural rim light around the edges, which makes them pop and look like they are celestial beings. Front lighting is the trickiest to work with because it removes most shadows, which can make a scene and your subjects feel flat. Without shadows, you lose that depth and texture, which is why front lighting is often seen as less dynamic. But it still has its uses. If the light is strong enough, it can make subjects stand out clearly, especially when they have bold shapes or contrasting colours. The key is to be aware of how it affects the composition you are shooting and simply adjust your framing or exposure to make the most of it. Now, why does knowing the direction of the light matter? Once you start paying attention to how light is hitting your subject, you can use it to shape your compositions, whether you're looking for bold contrast, clean silhouettes, or punchy graphic shots. Understanding how light direction works will give you more control over your final photos. Before we hit some techniques, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. You'll be doing me and my channel a huge favour. Thank you very much. In harsh light, your camera will try to balance the exposure. But because the light can be so insane, no matter what the settings say straight out of the camera, it will often lead to blown highlights. So the key is to expose for the brightest areas to keep them intact, even if that means letting the shadows go a little bit darker. On this shoot, I set a minimum shutter speed of 1/250th of a second, but I use exposure compensation all day, dialing it down to keep the highlights from clipping, which, as you can see from the data below the images, increased the shutter speed from the minimum that I set of 1/250th of a second, which is fine. If your camera has this function, use highlight exposure warnings, nicely called blinkies, to check if you're potentially blowing out your highlights. While we're on the subject of settings, for your info, for this shoot in a very sunny Hastings, I shot between an aperture of f5.6 and f11 in aperture priority, using auto ISO 100 to 3200 with a minimum shutter speed of 1/50th of a second. And as I said, constantly hitting back on the exposure compensation dial. This gave me enough depth of field to work with, whilst the auto ISO gave me enough leeway while shooting brighter or darker compositions, without worrying about any motion blur. Harsh light creates deep, bold shadows, and by observing their angles, you can use them to shape your compositions. Shadows add depth. They can frame your subjects and create visual interest and details in your shots. They can also create an air of mystery depending upon what you're shooting. Plus, you can also use shadows creatively by turning them into leading lines that will naturally guide the viewer's eye. By positioning yourself so that the shadows lead up to your subject, or just using shadows to frame your subject, you've then given yourself a whole host of opportunities to create more dynamic street shots on harsh light days. One of the best ways to make the most of harsh light is to get creative with the natural contrast and shoot silhouettes. When your subject is positioned against a bright background, cranking down the exposure compensation and exposing for the highlights will naturally push the subject into shadow, which will give them a clean, distinctive look. Silhouettes tend to work best when the subject has a clear, recognizable shape, so make sure you time your shots carefully and avoid messy backgrounds behind them. Strong backlighting makes this technique even more effective, as this will give your subject a crisp, well-defined outline. Harsh light makes window reflections stronger and clearer, as it reduces haze and adds definition and sharpness. On bright days like this, any reflections that you capture will be even more defined and clear. If you're interested in shooting reflections, then check out my video on capturing window reflections, which I will link up above right now. Plus, on these harsh light days, look for situations where light is hitting inside shops, cafes, any kind of buildings, as it can create extra depth and contrast and also a really interesting vibe. Harsh light creates strong, defined areas of brightness and shadows, which gives you these formations of natural pools of light on the ground or on the walls. The pools of light can be used to isolate your subject, which draws attention to them as they step into the light. Hard-edged shadows can also add structure to your compositions, which can ultimately create interesting shapes that can make your images even more interesting. So position yourself so that the subject moves through these light pockets and you'll get a striking high contrast effect. As we've discussed, backlighting works brilliantly for silhouettes, but even without going for a full-on silhouette, it can also create a natural glow around your subject, which makes them stand out and give them a bit of an angelic vibe. Therefore, look for moments where the light catches edges, like hair, clothing, or textures, to add an extra layer of atmosphere to your images. In harsh light, timing is everything. If your subject steps into the light a moment too soon or too late, the shot loses strong composition and impact. I've missed a few like that, just as they were entering the light. Now, I don't blame you for this. I blame my disability. I can't extend my arms out, so seeing the screen for me is tough in bright light. But that's exactly why anticipating the shot matters so much. But here's the thing, everyone has something that makes shooting harder, whether it's eyesight, mobility, confidence, or just struggling to make quick decisions. The key isn't to fight it, it's to find ways to work with it. For me, that means squinting my eyes and hoping that I get the right shot. Maybe for someone else, it's using burst mode or pre-focusing. Whatever it is, your photography should work for you, not against you. So the key here is to anticipate your subject's steps and time the shot as they enter the brightest portion of the frame, ideally at a rule of thirds intersection. Be patient, position yourself carefully, and let the light do the rest. So how do you use harsh light in your street photography? Do you love it like I do? Or do you find it more of a struggle and prefer different lighting conditions? Maybe you found a technique that works for you. I'd love to hear it, and I think so would the community. So please drop your thoughts down below. And if you want to take advantage of great light without chasing it down, then check out my video on grabbing photos without doing any of the hard work. Until we meet again, go forth and create.